For context, my mother-in-law and I don't really have a good relationship. She doesn't like me at all. She doesn't think I'm good enough for her son, same old. And like a lot of other mother-in-laws, she is stuck on her ex-daughter-in-law, fully believing that that woman was the perfect match for her son. Despite the fact that my husband's ex-wife was his biggest bully for the longest time, and it took him a lot of therapy to get out of that relationship and eventually move on from it. But just because Alice, my mother-in-law, had set my husband up with her, and just because that woman, let's call her Kylie, was the daughter of one of her close friends, she's still convinced that Kylie is the perfect woman for my husband, and I'm the worst decision that he's ever made. My husband is 32, male, and I'm 35, female. And both of us have been married before. My husband got married at 23 after dating Kylie for a year. And that was not because he wanted to marry her after just a year. It was because both of their parents wanted them to get married as soon as possible. And they basically pressured the two of them into it. At 26, he finally decided to file for a divorce because he had had enough of Kylie and her shenanigans. Because she was a horrible human being. He has told me all about his previous relationship, and honestly, I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy. That woman had serious anger issues. She would throw tantrums over everything. She refused to work and overspend all the time, not caring about how it affected their finances or her husband. On top of everything, she kept insisting that she wanted a child, even though she had proven herself incapable of being a good mother. What with her behavioral issues, but for whatever delusional reasons, everybody believed that having a baby would magically solve all the problems that they had been having. My husband kept delaying it for as long as possible. He kept making excuses because he really did not want to have a baby with her, unless and until he was sure that she could improve her nature, and when it became clear that she wasn't going to change, he decided to file for a divorce after 3 long years of tolerating her. After that, he was single for the longest time. He only focused on his work and on healing, which was not an easy process, given how upset his mother was with him. But because he doesn't have any siblings and his father is not around anymore, he was forced to stay in contact with his mom because they only have each other as family. She kept insisting that he should go back to Kylie and apologize to her and make everything right again, in spite of the fact that Kylie seemed to be perfectly happy making everything incredibly difficult for my husband during the divorce, demanding an insane amount of alimony. Thankfully, he had a good lawyer. He got away with a reasonable amount, but for Kylie, I would say that even 50 cents would be too much because she's just an awful person from whatever I've heard. Anyway, that was him and how he got divorced. With me, it was much more upsetting because I got married to my high school sweetheart when I was 22 years old. We spent 6 wonderful years together and even had a son before he eventually passed away after a long battle with brain cancer. So for both of us, moving on and finding each other was a huge deal because I never thought that I would find love again, and he was not even looking for it. But then we met through work around 2 years ago, and 6 months back we got married. Everyone's been pretty happy for us, with the exception of Alice, who can't stand me because she thinks I'm too old for her son. She thinks the fact that I have my own child and I'm still in contact with my ex-in-laws is disrespectful towards my husband, even though he doesn't seem to have a problem with it. And basically, she just doesn't like me and is constantly taking shots at me, trying to put me down. And because I know that my husband can't exactly cut her out of our lives just like that, I've put up with it silently because I don't want to create drama, and all I do is just ignore her. But I guess my husband had had enough. So basically 2 weeks ago I celebrated my birthday, and obviously Alice had to do something to ruin it. So she decided to bring out a cake even though we hadn't discussed it. I was pleasantly surprised, thinking that maybe she was finally doing something nice for me. But then when I got the chance to read what was written on the cake, I realized that it was my foolishness to assume that she would ever be capable of doing something nice for me. She had had Kylie's name written on the cake in icing instead of mine, and obviously everybody got pretty awkward when they saw that, and nobody knew what to say. Then she pretended to notice her mistake, and even though I'm pretty sure that it was not a mistake at all, and I am certain that she had meant for it to be intentional, just to show me my place. Anyway, she pretended to see how she had screwed up and started giggling, saying that it was just a force of habit and I shouldn't take it to heart. And I replied in kind, telling her that I forgive her, and I just moved on with the evening because I did not want to give her the satisfaction of knowing that she had ruined my day. And she really hadn't, because after that, everyone was nice enough to move on from it, and everyone pretended like it hadn't even happened. And she just sulked for the rest of the evening because I guess the cake hadn't had the desired effect of creating drama and making me lash out. But after everybody left, my husband was very upset. He kept telling me that he was not going to let her get away with this, and I thought that he was going to talk to her or something, but then he didn't, and I was very confused. But eventually I forgot about it, even though I was a bit disappointed that he was letting this go so easily. But then, given what happened recently, I guess I shouldn't have been so worried about him letting it go, because as it turns out, he hadn't forgotten at all. He had just been planning a way to get back at her, and he did, because boy, oh boy, what he did was crazy. My mother-in-law and I have our birthdays just 2 weeks apart, which was pretty convenient for what my husband had been planning, because that way, whatever had happened at my birthday party was pretty fresh in everybody's minds. At least all the common guests. So on Alice's birthday, my husband decided to bring out a cake, and this time, instead of her name, it was 4 or 5 names belonging to other women, and for a second I was quite confused until I recognized one of the names. I realized that one of the names belonged to my late father-in-law's mistress, and instantly I knew what he had done. For context, my father-in-law was pretty much a serial cheater, and until he passed away from a heart attack 8 years ago, he was pretty much constantly looking for other women, and my husband had told me that his childhood was pretty much just full of fights between his parents. Because his mother was always upset that her husband couldn't stay loyal to her, she couldn't even leave, because then where would she go? And his father was also constantly annoyed because he felt like he had been trapped in this marriage that he didn't even want in the first place, and it was all because of his son, even though he hadn't been ready to have a baby back when Alice decided that she was going to keep the baby. The worst part is that his parents did not even bother to hide any of these fights from him. His dad would constantly blame him for his unhappiness, and his mom, even though she tried to be there for him, couldn't help but vent to him all the time, and obviously that's highly inappropriate behavior towards your son. To be ranting to him about your husband's mistresses, but that's how their family worked. Naturally, my husband grew up hating his father and resenting his mother, but he still did right by them, until this birthday party. When I saw that name, I realized that one of the mistresses had an on-again, off-again relationship with my father-in-law, and he had even left her something in his will. So naturally, that came as a huge blow to Alice when she realized what that cake was all about. She looked utterly betrayed when my husband brought out that cake, but unlike her, my husband did not try to play innocent or giggle as if he had no idea what he was doing. I was also pretty scandalized, and so was everyone else, and nobody knew what to say. So we just left it to the mother and son. Obviously, it took a few seconds for Alice to compose herself, but then she immediately started yelling at her son, cussing him out, and he just told her that it was a force of habit for him as well, because these names were all he had heard while growing up, since she had no sense of boundaries and didn't know what to talk to her son about in his childhood. And even now, She had no idea how to behave herself in front of people and be good to the woman that he loved. He called her bitter and jealous right to her face, told her that just because she had never been able to find love in her life, she was upset that he had been able to find somebody, and the only reason she was constantly trying to put me down was because I was secure with who I am instead of being miserable all the time, and she couldn't stand it. Honestly, even I was shocked that he would say it to her face in front of so many people, and then she started crying. But instead of trying to comfort her, he just asked me to follow him because he was leaving and he was done with her. He didn't want anything to do with her. I felt weird, but I left along with him because I didn't think I had anything else to say or do. So that was a few days back, and since then we have had numerous calls from the rest of my husband's family telling us that my mother-in-law had a full-blown breakdown at her birthday party and literally had to be rushed to the doctors because apparently she couldn't breathe and seemed to be having some sort of attack or something. Everybody has been trying to contact me and my husband, telling us that we need to talk it out with her because she is miserable. But my husband has made it very clear that he doesn't want anything to do with her. At least not right now. He's hired a nurse for her for a couple of days, but everybody's been telling him that that's not a solution right now because what she needs is to talk to him. She needs to see him and sort things out with him because this is more of a mental thing than a physical ailment. And I don't know how much truth there is in that statement. But I can't help but think that maybe we are screwing up by refusing to see her. Don't get me wrong, I still don't like Alice. I don't want anything to do with her. And if I could help it, I would probably erase her from my life entirely because she's never been nice to me or my son. She's never accepted us. She's always tried to belittle me. So obviously, I don't like the woman. At the end of the day, she's still my husband's mother and she's a widow. She doesn't really have anybody else by her side. She doesn't have another child. She doesn't have a life partner. And the rest of the family, while they are worried for her, can't exactly leave their own lives to take care of her. I don't know. I just feel very guilty in this whole situation. I feel like my husband might end up resenting me in the future if something happens to his mother and he's not there for her. Because here's the thing. In spite of everything that has happened, I know that he still loves his mom because that's the whole reason that we have had to put up with her so far anyway. If he didn't love his mother, he wouldn't have tolerated her for so many years, and he wouldn't have begged me to let it go on so many occasions so that there wouldn't be any more drama with his mom. I know he loves her, and I feel like he's making his choice to leave her behind because of me, so if something were to happen, God forbid, I wouldn't want to be held responsible for it, and I know that my husband is not the kind of man who would do something like that. He's a good man. I love him. But at the end of the day, you never know. Besides, it's not even about knowing, it's just about how guilty I feel since she is definitely an aged lady without anybody to be there for her emotionally apart from her son. And yes, she has definitely screwed up. I can't deny that. And I won't deny it either. But I don't know. I feel like I'm the bad guy here for not encouraging my husband to go back to his mom and try to sort things out with her and at least give her a second chance. I'm just really confused right now. I don't know how to feel about any of this, and I feel like I'm losing my mind right now. I never signed up for any of this drama. I never really wanted any of it. I was completely fine with ignoring my mother-in-law's drama and pretending like none of it happened. It would get on my nerves, sure, but this is even worse than what was happening earlier. I don't know what to say. AITA for not encouraging my husband to try and reconcile with his mother? Edit. Okay, so a lot of people wanted to know how my mother-in-law was not being nice to my son, and let me just tell you guys, it's not like she was actively going out of her way to say mean things to him or anything. I definitely would not have tolerated that. I just meant that she was not being nice to him in the sense that she was just indifferent to him, and I don't know. He doesn't seem to care about it, but I found it very strange. I can understand her not liking me, but my son hasn't done anything, so why doesn't she like him? He's 11 years old, so it's not like he's a total child. He can handle himself. And when he first met Alice, he did come back home and tell me that he had a feeling that the old lady did not like him. And since that point in time, he has never made an effort to talk to her and get along with her or anything. He ignores her right back, and I think it's good for him to take a stand for himself at such a young age because he knows this person doesn't seem to like him. And he just stays away without bothering himself about what that person might think of him or trying to force his company on that person. At the same time, I also think it's very sad because as an 11-year-old, he shouldn't have to deal with any of this. I'm just lucky that my husband makes up for all of it by showering my son with extra love, and honestly, they are pretty much best friends now. Obviously, both of us still miss my late husband a lot. And he will always be my father's son and the first love of my life. But at the same time, I think my husband is doing a pretty great job of being the second greatest love of my life and my son's stepdad. So yeah, basically I have no complaints about him and he's always been good to my son. But Alice, well, not so much. But like I said, I guess it matters more to me than to him because my son doesn't really seem to care whether Alice likes him or not. He doesn't even give her the time of day whenever she comes around, and now that she hasn't been coming around for a couple of days, he doesn't even seem to notice it. Nor does he ask about her, so honestly, good for him. I'm proud of the fact that I have a son who knows himself so well, who's so secure at such a young age, and yeah, I just really admire him. Update 1. Hey, so I decided to speak to my husband about everything that's been weighing on my conscience because I decided the best way to deal with all of this would be to just speak to him and let him know how I was feeling, rather than dealing with all of this on my own and keeping it all to myself just because I didn't want to burden him even more. I thought that it would be best to just get it out of the way, and I'm very thankful I made the choice of doing that. As it is, most of the comments suggested just talking to him, and honestly the only reason that I hadn't been doing that was, like I said, because I did not want to be even more of a burden on him and I didn't want to put him out or anything. But a couple of hours ago, I decided to finally just pull off the Band-Aid and we sat down to have a discussion about all of this. My son was spending the day with his paternal grandparents. So it was the perfect time to bring it up because we were home alone, and even if we did have a fight, at least we would be able to talk about our feelings openly and wouldn't have to tiptoe around it anymore. So yeah, I just told him everything that I had spoken about in my original post. And he heard me out quietly. He was silent for a couple of seconds after I was done talking, and then he told me he really respected the fact that I had thought about this in such depth. And it just went to show what a forgiving and generous person I was, because for somebody to care about the feelings of a person who has treated me with nothing but contempt and hatred wouldn't be the easy thing to do for anybody in this world apart from me, and that's why he loves me so much. Obviously, that was pretty sweet of him, but then he moved on to the more difficult part and told me that while he respected whatever I felt, he wanted me to know that this decision that he had made of cutting out his mother from his life was not entirely because of me. It was because of the fact that his mother in general had always been quite toxic to him, and he needed to do something about it because he couldn't take it constantly, and then expect me and my son to deal with it as well, because we are not even her flesh and blood, so why should we have to pay the price for the fact that he's too attached to her? It doesn't seem to be fair to either of us, and most importantly, he had realized that what he had been putting himself through was not fair either. And that's when I saw the emotional dams finally breaking down, because he had been holding back a lot of things simply to avoid drama and confrontation. But I guess my husband was just tired of holding back and keeping everything together, so he allowed himself to break down, and I'll let him cry it out. And then he explained to me that even though I was the reason he had finally decided to cut his mother out of his life, he had decided it was not just good for all three of us. me, himself, and my son. He had realized that most importantly, this was something that he needed to do to fix his own life. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much he wanted to be able to love his mom fully, no matter how much he was attached to her, she was ultimately still not a good person. And worst of all, she didn't even try. She had never even tried to be a good mother when he was a kid. And neither of his parents had ever even tried to give him a good life. Nobody had bothered to make things normal for him. Everybody was too caught up in their own drama and their own life, and he did not want to be that kind of person. Especially now that he felt like he was a father figure to somebody. He wanted to be able to be a good father, and that meant not having somebody around who couldn't stand my son, because he truly believed that my son was his son as well. And I know that my son also sees my husband as a father figure. And it just made my heart so happy to hear that. And on top of this, he also told me he wanted to be true to himself and he wanted to do what was right for himself as well. Because that would be the only way to keep his family happy and together. And when he said that, he needed to comfort me because I was the one crying because I got pretty emotional. In the end, we ended up hugging it out and we decided we were going to stick to his decision of not having any contact with his mother. It was going to be difficult and I probably was going to feel very guilty, and so was he. But ultimately, that was what had to be done. That woman had never even tried to become a good person, and now she was just going to have to face up to the consequences of whatever she had done throughout her life. It was going to be hard on her, but that was the whole point of it. She had never made things easy for other people, so, well, nobody can say that this is not well deserved. And at least he's not abandoning her completely. She's still got a nurse. He's paying for it, and that's as much as he's willing to do for her right now. And I think that's completely fine. After all, people sometimes need to prioritize themselves as well, and I think that's totally okay. Update 2. Hey, so it's been 6 months since my previous update. And well, I have a new life update. My husband and I are expecting. I never thought this would happen again, honestly. Biologically, I thought that it would be very difficult. But I just started my second trimester, and so far, it's been going pretty well. When we found out about it, we were pretty confused. But then I realized I really wanted to do this, and so we chose to go ahead with the pregnancy. I'm truly extremely happy that I've been blessed with this opportunity, especially when I was least expecting it. But yeah, I'm happy I'm going to have a baby again. And it's definitely going to be hard on my body and even harder for me to make space for everything in my life again. Given my hectic career and everything, but given how supportive my husband is being right now, I can only imagine how supportive he's going to be after the baby's born. So I'm not too worried. Anyway, we made the announcement on social media a couple of weeks ago, and soon afterwards, Alice tried to contact me. She did not call or message my husband. She emailed me, saying that she was truly sorry for everything that had happened, but now that I was pregnant again, she really wanted a second chance. And she would do anything to make it all right again. We hadn't spoken in months, especially after everything that had happened at her birthday party and all that. So this was definitely out of the blue. But I spoke to my husband and we decided that we're going to give it a second chance. After all, this is a new start for us as well, so why not? If it goes wrong this time, then we can just cut her off and go no contact. But at least we'll have the satisfaction of knowing we tried. We did everything that we could. And that's good enough for us. So yeah, we're having dinner with Alice this weekend, and well, we'll let you know how it goes. I'm honestly kind of nervous about it. I don't know what to expect. I'm just hoping that it goes well. Because right now, I don't want anything going wrong in my life. I just can't deal with it. But whatever. I'm not going to put too much pressure on it, and I'm just going to be laid back and see how it goes. Update 3. So it's been a couple of days since I had dinner with my mother-in-law, and surprisingly enough, it went pretty decently. She was calm, she was polite and civil to all of us, and she made a lot of conversation with me and my son. She made an extra effort to be kind and courteous to us, and I guess that's what we should have expected, because after everything that she has said and done, that's the bare minimum. Anyway, the point is, it went pretty well, and she has invited us over for dinner next week as well. She seems to be a much quieter and calm person now, and I like this new change. Let's see how long this lasts. I have a feeling this might last quite long. I guess she has finally learned her lesson or whatever, and I'm glad that she's trying to make up for everything that has happened. Maybe we will finally be one big happy family unit, who knows? Anyway, after my last update, I did get a lot of comments saying that she was just doing it for the grandbaby. And yeah, I'm aware that my child is definitely a huge factor in her decision to reach out. But I don't mind the fact that my baby is going to be a catalyst for this, if it's going to be a pleasant thing in our lives. I do believe in second chances, because I think after everything that has happened with me and my husband in the past, we should be the last people to turn up our noses at a second chance. So yeah, if somebody wants to change, and if somebody really wants to put an effort into making things right, I'm all for it. But anyway, I'm just happy that things are going well for me right now. My husband and I are quite happy, and so is my son. And with the new baby on the way, I know that everything will work out. I can just feel it. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.